Welcome to the Midday Market update for February the 18th, 2021. My name is Kevin Hill, here as always with Michael Vincent. How are you doing today, Michael?
I'm doing great, man. Happy afternoon to you. And did you get snow down there in downtown
A
Chattanooga
little bit
last?
of ice, just a lot of rain.
Okay,
So just a little bit
yeah,
of ice.
that's
It
yeah.
didn't really stick. What about you? Did you get any snow?
A little bit on the rooftops and some rain, but just north of us, a lot of ice and stuff. And we'll talk to Nick Austin. It's still nasty in parts of the United States, that's for sure. And Houston still,
Hmm.
they got a ways to go to recover from this one. This in a lot of way. This was a bad event for those people down there, man. But hey, our interactive show, right? Twice
Yeah.
weekly interactive show. So LinkedIn and Facebook, get your questions and comments in. We'll get to them as best we possibly can, right, Kevin?
We can, yeah. I'm logging into to LinkedIn right now, so I should be up and running in just a second. But we have an exciting show. We have Bill Cantania, from founder and CEO of OneRail, joining us
Right.
at 12:30, and then our very own John Kingston coming in from Long Island and talking about diesel prices at 12:40, which is goes along with that weather pattern across the country, especially in Houston, where refineries and production is shut down at the moment, and becoming a little bit more scarce. It's one of the biggest shutdowns that we've seen in a long, long time, especially anything outside of a hurricane. But we have the headlines coming up on FreightWaves.com, and if you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, the daily, every day at noon, about this time right now, it's hitting inboxes with top stories in the freight markets and supply chain type of stories for you. You can sign up for that on FreightWaves.com. And then we have Zach Strickland talk about the freight markets, Anthony Smith talking about the economic numbers, and of course, Nick Austin talking about the weather today, which is one of the big stories out there, right, Michael Vincent?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And we had Patrick Mayer from Golf Winds International on earlier in the week, right? And he
Hmm.
called in graciously from Houston in the middle of what's going on. I spoke with him this morning, Kevin, and now he's got electricity and things are coming back online, but the port is completely still shut down. Rails are still shut down. Nothing's moving in Dallas. Their terminals and the terminals up in Memphis are shut down under snow. Mobile's shut down under snow. Distribution centers have no power there. And it's really Houston is in a bad way, but really, and Nick will get into this a little bit more, but just from a logistics perspective, we'll have Patrick on either later next week or the week after to talk about getting through this because this is the story is really coming up. It's just how bad things are backed up there. They're looking at hopefully coming back online and moving stuff by the end of the weekend. As it's supposed to be like
Hmm.
70, I guess, on Saturday. But digging out from this is what they're really worried about, and it's going to be a week or so to unsnarl all this logistics mess that you have in eastern Texas.
It is. It's very problematic. It's a snarl that's going to take, as you said, weeks to unravel. Port of Houston, the intermodal, the getting everything back up and running and smoothing everything out is going to take quite a bit. So we'll definitely keep eyes on that story as we're coming through here. We'll keep eyes out on the West Coast as well, right? I mean,
Oh
62
yeah.
ships are parked out there, and
Yeah, we'll get
becoming.
into that. But our
Hmm.
first headline, you wanted me to start with our
Yeah,
first
yeah, let's
headline
do
there,
that.
Kevin?
Yeah,
All
let's
right, brother. Let me
talk
let me
about some
take it away.
trucking.
Todd, yeah, Todd. So Todd Maiden writes about Werner says weather hits its Q1 earnings, and the capacity cavalry is not coming. Right, and I love listening to Leathers. Right,
Yeah,
you love his quotes, man.
I
He
do.
just puts it out there. He's got great quotes. But appearing at the Barclays Industrial Select Conference, management from Werner Enterprise said the negative impacts from the recent winter storms could result in a 3 to 4 cent hit to first quarter earnings. I don't think that's a shock to anybody, really. The current consensus earnings estimates for the Omaha, Nebraska based transportation and logistics provider 67 cents per share. So, Leather said Q1 weather has been a significant challenge to say the least. Said Derek Leather's vice chairman, sorry, and president and CEO of the 7,800 truck carrier. Poor weather has forced the drivers to park their trucks, resulting in freight backlogs that could take a couple of weeks to unwind. And when you're looking at this, the cost of driving, of paying a driver on downtime alone, with higher frequency in road service events, has put a clear impact on their income for the quarter. But you're talking about 1,000 or so trucks that they've been shutting down per day in recent times here, when usually during a normal winter, Kevin, you're talking about maybe a couple hundred trucks shut down for a little while while the road's clear, right? But you're talking about
Hmm.
thousands during a day. So it's really impacting them quite a bit. And other than the disruptions from weather, truck demand remains above normal seasonality, which Leathers indicated will only extend the current demand cycle, which we're in right now and seeing. Heading into the stretch of adverse weather, Werner's trucks were oversold on a daily basis. The current weather wrinkle places its capacity in an extremely oversold environment, is what he said. The runway for inventory restocking will carry demand for multiple quarters, according to Werner CFO John Steele. He noted that most retailers reported really tight inventory conditions through the end of October, which was the close of the retail fiscal third quarter. During the period, increases in e-commerce and same-store sales significantly outpaced inventory, as we've noted many times on this show and others. And since that time, we've had increases in COVID activity that slowed the ability of the suppliers to be able to deliver the merchandise needed and restock those inventories. But the cavalry is not coming. Werner expects to increase earnings year over year again in 2021, following um, an 8% increase last year. Part of that expectation is based on fleet growth of 1 to 3%. But Leathers believes the capacity headwinds for facing trucking are structural, and even after 4 consecutive months of new truck orders above 40,000 units, a level normally considered well into the capacity expansion territory, his view that it's only replacement level and not really expansion. And he kind of goes into that saying that they're not going to be able to produce 400,000 trucks this year, right? He
Hmm.
doesn't even think they're going to be able to do in their own estimates, maybe 300. And so you're looking at replacement level and not really any type of expansion. And then you got to look towards Kevin, where we talked to several different people about this, is, the raw material and semiconductor shortages, in part due to the import delays, like you're saying, the 62 ships sitting out there, et cetera, uh, really cramping down on those production delays as well. So, and then you have the capacity issues, as Leather points out, from the drug and alcohol clearance recorded 56,000 driver violations, 82% from drugs, et cetera, 40% fewer drivers graduating schools. So there's not this belief. He doesn't believe it, and I think he's right. I don't think there's going to be that much of an increase in um, in capacity coming in there. The cavalry's not coming to save us all, right? He also
Yeah.
states that really, once you get into this change from consumer spending for goods and it starts to switch to services and travel, you're talking about the latter half of 2021, right? You're talking about the summer going into that, and as he says, um, he doesn't think that consumers are going to avoid the holidays. In his quote here, and I love this, is they're not going to not buy this year and tell the kids nothing's under the tree because we're going to go to 4 concerts instead. Leathers said, which I love that. I love that quote.
Yeah.
I think he's right in some parts, right?
Yeah, he is in a lot of ways, and there's a lot to unpack there. New truck orders being number one, being more replacement, and we had very depressed levels in 2019 and early part of 2020. So there's probably a lot of replacement coming out. And then the second number is that, what was it? Graduating trucking schools only 40% of
Yeah.
normal right now, which tells you really all you need to know right there, is that no matter how many trucks you order, or whether it's replacement or new capacity, if you're only graduating 40% of a normal class each week or each month in driving schools, though the drivers just aren't going to be there to get into those trucks, and it takes a while for the trucks to get, but, expanding capacity right now uh, in 2021 is going to be very tough because of that bottleneck just right there. And then you have drug clearinghouse. You have a number of different other factors in there, and you have a very busy building. Construction, whether it's retail or commercial, that's a very hot market as well, and that has a lot of competition for drivers, especially in the short and medium term. So there's a lot in there to unpack, and then that shift of spending, right? I mean, that shift is going to happen when people can travel. I mean, I'm ready to take a vacation. I'm ready to get out of this apartment. Um,
Yeah, yeah, but I
I'm
think
ready
he's
to have
also
fun.
I think he's also correct in in saying that there's not going to be this huge change because of when that happens, right? There's still
Mhm.
you're talking about the mid right at the beginning of the holiday rush and back to school rush, which is going to happen big time too, right? Kids
Yeah.
going back to school. How much of those supplies are really going to go through the roof this year because kids are going back to school and they didn't get to do all that
Mhm.
spending last year? How much of that is pent up? I wonder. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're going to have a huge increase in that. And the Christmas season is going to be really nice as well. It's people are going to buy gifts for under the tree, definitely. But you have a lot of other spending. I think home improvement, things like that. It's going to fall. I mean, you had if you just talk about home improvement, Home Depot,
Yeah.
Lowe's, that they had a banner year in 2020 because everyone's stuck at home, creating swing sets, swing hinge, and doing all kinds of different home
Nah, come
improvements.
on, bro.
And so,
Yeah. But you look at the
you have
fall.
all of that, but all of there's going to be such a shift in spending that it's hard to even predict exactly the magnitude of a fall in freight or an increase in airline passengers in 2021, right? I think it might be
Yeah.
even longer term changes that spill into 2022 and even maybe 2023. It might not be just a light switch that goes on and off.
Yeah. So tell me, Kevin. Speaking of back to school, were you one of those? Were you one of those back to school? The toadies with their obsequious behavior, trying to suck up to the cool kids and wear all the cool clothes and stuff like that. Were you one of those guys running around wearing the polo and the Nautica or members only jacket? Were you one of those guys?
Of course, and the Sebagos. And when I was earlier, you had to have a Star Wars lunchbox or,
Yeah. There
Spider
you go.
Man or Hercules. And we were all toadies. We were all
Yeah. There you
toadies,
go.
following each other.
Yeah. I got you. I got you. So tell me about these 62 ships that are sitting out there in harbor, my friend.
Yeah, this is a story that's going to be around for months. And from Gene Sirocco, it sounds like it will be until midsummer. I mean, we are, and I was talking to Greg Miller and Eric Coolish right before we got on air in one of our writers' meetings. And you know what? There's so much information coming out, and we're showing graphics right now of the ship locations and the congestion there at the ports. And what we have is 62 vessels, including 20 container ships destined for the port of Los Angeles. They're at anchor in San Pedro Bay that you can see right there on your screen early Wednesday afternoon. Gene Sirocco, the executive director at the Port of LA, says if we do nothing, we will still have vessels at anchor come midsummer. Right? Under normal conditions, we usually don't have any container ships at anchor. Before the import surge, we would see 10 to 12 container vessels at berth on a typical day here at the Port of LA. Today, we are averaging north of 15 container ships being worked every single day. About 15% of vessels that currently are on their way to Los Angeles are going direct to berth. Of the 85% of ships going to anchor, the average wait time has been climbing. When ships first started backing up in November, anchorage time was about 2.5 days. In February, thus far, anchorage time is now tracking at 8 days. So that's somewhere between 300% and 400% increase in anchorage time. So container
Well,
dwell times, yes. Container
yeah. Well,
dwell
I mean,
times on,
but
on terminals, huh? Where are you
Go
going to say?
go no. Yeah, no, you're getting into that right there because I was
Yeah.
just gonna say, and then you add on to it the container dwell time, right? That's on top of
Hmm.
the at anchor.
Yeah.
Go
So the
ahead.
dwell time is remains about 5 days, or double what it was before import surge started last summer. Street dwell time waiting for warehouse space is now at 7.6 days for a traditional 40-foot container. We need to get back to about 3.5 days of on-street dwell time where it was holding pre-import surge. So, Michael Vincent, can you explain to us kind of the difference between street time and you have dwell time on terminals, and then you have street dwell time, right? Can
Yeah,
you add a little color to
I I
what
re
exactly those are?
I don't know what that is, to
Uh,
tell you the truth. I really don't. I mean, I ran container freight stations and so on, but I wasn't, for a number of years I did, but I wasn't involved in stevedoring and right there inside the ports. So,
mhm.
I'm not sure what they mean by the difference there. I really don't.
So I guess on terminals is terminals that the container remains at the terminal, and then street time is before it gets off the terminal into a warehouse.
I
That's
guess yeah, I guess that would be it. I mean, the terminals are operated by different terminal operators. The Port of Los Angeles doesn't operate terminals. The different
yeah.
terminal companies operate those terminals. So getting out of those terminals, but then on the street time, I don't know. I would think the street time in would be more measured than out. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly that definition what that is, but nonetheless, you're talking about 8 days and then another 5 days. I mean, once it gets to anchor, basically, heck, you're still 3 weeks away from getting your freight out of there, right?
You are. You are until you get to, so it goes back to a story that we're starting to chase down about the smaller warehousing distributors, wholesalers out there who are in this cash crunch right now because they can't get the goods landed. The good
Yeah,
they have to pay for it, right? And they
yeah,
don't get their
that's
money until
right.
it's landed. And you extend that out, another 30, 60 days, and your creditors don't really care that the ports of Long Beach and LA or any other ports can't get your goods offloaded, do they?
No, you can, and thank goodness Lorianne, Laraco, she's out there and she's got a indissoluble mission to get that word out there to try and get this stuff fixed because it's a real issue out there for these people, and it's a really a large economic impact. Gene Sirocco, he says in this article in this talk with FreightWaves, if they stopped shipments today, all shipments into the port today, they still have a month's worth of work, Kevin.
That's still a month's worth of work. I mean,
Yeah.
it's outstanding. I mean, and we saw the video. Greg Miller had the video. Kim Link Wills has this story about the backup in the Bay, and it just keeps on going. She has another story out, Kim, that was published I think last night about Maersk. That they have another ship that they lost containers on. I mean, that's three big incidences of ships at sea losing containers as well. So there's just a lot of news coming out on the international maritime and ocean markets. It's amazing.
Yeah, it really is. And when we were talking to Patrick Mayer again at Gulf Winds down in Houston, he was saying, we were talking about, it's a major a bulk type of port, right? And it's a break bulk type of port because of the oil and the chemicals. It's a big chemical type of port, but they were starting to see the shift towards more containerized type of shipments and regular shipments like you would think of in the 40-foot and 20-foot TEUs coming through instead of the big bulk tankers, et cetera. And seeing that really Gene Soroka in the Port of Los Angeles talking about metering the shipments and changing them to
Hmm.
other places. Well, you can't send them to Houston right now because it's shut down, unfortunately. But maybe it'll open up. I don't know. Do we have? Should we get to weather with Nick here,
Yeah,
Kevin?
let's get to weather with Nick. And I see in the LinkedIn comments, Dooner and my father are arguing about weather and wind chills. So we will throw it over to Nick right now to give us an idea of how cold it is on the Great Plains.
Hey guys, well, wind chills for a lot of the week across the plains, even as far down as into northern Texas, places like that. Yeah, the wind chills have been down to as cold as 20 below zero down in parts of
Wow.
Texas. But up in the northern plains, they had wind chills in the 50s and 60s below zero. So I can't even imagine that. I don't even want to think about it. But just all kinds of problems out there from these two winter storms. The first one hit back on Sunday and lasted into Monday from Texas and Oklahoma and into the Mississippi River Valley, parts of the Deep South that aren't used to getting snow and ice, especially not this much. And then the second storm is out there right now, as you can see on the radar there on the Sonar Critical Events map. So there's kind of a band of snow from West Texas over to Austin, San Antonio, stretching all the way up to Memphis, Nashville, and into the Great Lakes. And to the east of that, there's a second batch of heavier snow, a little more widespread up across the Northeast, the I-95 corridor. Some areas are getting sleet and freezing rain out of that. So the Northeast is going to be messy for today and tomorrow as well, including a lot of important freight markets and just big metropolitan areas on the I-95 corridor. So that's going to be an issue. But just want to run down some other things here across in Texas, just Texas. There's still about 500,000 customers without electricity, which is a big improvement over a couple of days ago. Guys, a couple of days ago, there was about 4 million people in Texas without power. So they're getting things back online there. Other southern states still have hundreds of thousands of people without electricity. Union Pacific had closed all of its intermodal terminals, so that's had a ripple effect through their system. Some of those terminals reopened today. The rest of them, which are mostly out west, will reopen tomorrow morning. APM terminals, their gate at Port Elizabeth, New Jersey, is closed today because of that storm that's moving through. So, I mean, just all kinds of stuff. Road closures, mostly on U.S. and state routes, but there's still road closures just about every state across the South that has gotten hit by these storms. But one bit of good news there is that the Interstate 10 Mississippi River Bridge in Baton Rouge has reopened. That was closed for a few days because of ice and snow. So you just name it. I mean, delays everywhere, whether you're talking about at the seaports, on the roads, the rails, Postal Service. This is from Arkansas yesterday. This is about 25 miles east of Little Rock on Interstate 40 yesterday. Accidents. You see all the truckers there, one on the side of the road, the other's just waiting for the accident to be cleared. And this kind of thing has been happening all week in different places across the South, guys. Just, they're not used to this kind of thing. They don't normally have the equipment to either clean up and shovel the snow or to pre-treat roads as much as areas up northeast, of course. So, but it should warm up enough in a lot of southern states over the next few days. They'll start to get melting. Unfortunately, it could be cold enough at night that some refreezing may happen, but overall, I think it'll improve over the next few days.
Yeah, let's hope that it does, because man, it is a mess out there, and there's people. I mean, there's some life and death situation down there in Houston for sure. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, Texas, as far as all the states, Texas probably did get hit the worst, particularly Houston. You guys were talking about, the Port Houston is closed, and just the roads. If you were to look at the Texas Department of Transportation map that shows road closures and all that, there aren't a lot of interstate road closures. It's mostly U.S. and state routes where there are closures, but it also shows you where the roads are covered in snow and ice. And almost every road, it looks like, across the eastern half of Texas still has ice and snow on it, according to that map. So that's pretty major. I mean, it's going to take a while for that to thaw out. And with some of those roads may be closed. And if they're not closed, they're just, pretty dangerous to drive on.
Yeah. So can you answer something for us and settle the dispute here between Dooner and Kevin Hill's father? Is it true that the person who decides, the wind chill just kind of sticks their head out the window and says, it's 23, but it feels like 12. Is that true?
Like this? Just goes like that?
Yeah. Yeah. Is that how that's done?
Not only to tell a wind direction, but wind chill.
That's how you do that.
Is that how you measure wind chill?
If you don't know which way the wind's coming from, just go like this and step outside. Whichever part of your finger gets cold, that's you got to know which way you're facing, though. That's the thing. You have to know which direction you're facing.
That is very true.
Wind chill, though, I mean, in all seriousness, it's a good thing you brought up wind chill, because we've been talking about the snowstorms for the past 3 or 4 days. But while all that's been going on, that Arctic cold air up in the northern plains, parts of the Great Lakes, has been hanging around in areas that haven't gotten a lot of snow. It's just still been really, really cold. And when you're talking about temperatures for days and days, for like a week and a half or 2 weeks, actual temperatures getting into the 20s or 30 below zero, and wind chills down in the 40s, 50s below zero. If you step outside for even just a few minutes, you better make sure that every inch of skin on your body is covered, because you could get frostbite. And when you're talking 40s and 50s wind chills below zero, you can get frostbite in the matter of 5 minutes, 5 or 6 minutes. I mean, it sets in really fast. So it's pretty brutal. And the thing is that when you get temperatures in the 20s and 30s below zero, it doesn't take much wind to get a wind chill. I mean, it only takes a 5-mile-an-hour wind to get some wind chill out of that. It doesn't have to be really, really gusty. So it's dangerous stuff when you're talking about those kinds of temperatures and wind chills, especially when it gets to, temperatures get to below zero across parts of central Texas. That doesn't happen very often. And there have been areas in the South that have had not only record low temperatures, but record daily snowfalls from these storms. Some areas, like Dallas and Houston, getting 4, 5, 6 inches of snow in one day. I mean, that's pretty rare. And Little Rock, too.
It definitely
Other
is.
places in the South.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nick, for that weather update. We are behind time right now, so let's do some catch up. I do have a couple LinkedIn comments here from Sorgy Burt. Hi, folks. Things have been pretty rough weather-wise here at GP Transco, Chicagoland area. Things are finally warming up, it seems. And then Bill Goodigan says average anchorage times for container ships at 8 days and average dwell times at 5 days is crazy. Michael Vincent, I agree with you. And let's check in with the trucking markets and see where rejections, see how capacity is trending right now with Zach Strickland.
Hey guys, so the interesting thing is that the weather continues to be a huge factor in capacity this week, with tender rejections jumping back up over 25%. This is the highest value we've seen since we were falling out of that Christmas, New Year's tightness back in late December. And what's fascinating about this is that tender volumes have actually fallen dramatically, about 6% down week over week. So shippers are also taking a pause here as they're not able to produce or ship as much freight. And it's not necessarily easing the pressure on capacity on the truckload side. So it's, an interesting dynamic to see it play out. Now, some of the places that you would think may not be as influenced by the winter weather. Texas obviously being one of the biggest areas hit by the ice and cold and snow, but Los Angeles specifically has also seen a pretty big hit to this in terms of overall tender rejection rates jumping up to their highest point since around Christmas as well. So it's not just an isolated thing where you're sitting in the center of the country and everything's shutting down. It's impacting carrier networks across the land. We've talked about this over the past several weeks. It's having a pretty big influence over the rest of the country as well. The real fascinating thing here is that accepted volumes are down about 11% overall. So overall truckload volumes have taken a considerable hit. This is the lowest level we've seen non-holiday since last year. So it's since really when we were starting to recover out of that COVID period. So it should be a temporary thing, more than likely. These weather events tend to be very short-lived. A week or two, if no other weather influences come into play, we'll probably see things start to normalize once again. But in the meantime, I would say over the next week or so, if you're especially in the center of the country or any of these bigger markets, be prepared to pay for it on the spot market.
Yeah, I would imagine that. The weather throws an extra added variable of volatility to the markets right now.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, there's going to be a ripple effect. As recover, because it's not just Houston that's shut down. Eastern half of Texas was shut down for a number of days, and a massive amount of freight flows through those areas, right? And then it's hit all the way through that swath, all the way up into Port Elizabeth. EWR is shut down. Mm-hmm. Not a small port.
Yeah, it's not a small port whatsoever. Definitely. Let's turn the page and go to the economy and what economic numbers our lead economist Anthony Smith is paying attention to today.
Hi, Kevin. Hi, Michael. Coming at you live from Freight Alley. And the big updates for today, of course, as you know, initial jobs claims. You saw that initial jobs claims are up once more to 861,000 jobs claims for the most recent month. And once again, I am very skeptical of these numbers. But this is a 4-week high, and it's showing that there is not a substantial decline in these initial jobs claims, and just kind of adds to how far we have to go for the unemployment or employment segment overall. The other big release that we saw was housing starts that fell about 6% on a month-to-month basis. If you recall from last week, I mentioned don't be too surprised if we see 1 month of downward movement for housing or any of these other segments like that have been really hot over the last few months. And just 1 month of downward movement isn't going to be indicative of an overall trend. We have to see what the 2, 3, 4, 5 month movement is going to be. One of the other things that we saw from housing and construction was that permits were at a high still. The area of concern is that we are building at a very fast pace, or looking to build at a fast pace, that's being prompted up by limited existing homes inventories. So that's going to be an area to watch closely is, are there going to be more homes that are going to come onto the market on the existing home level? And if they are, is this going to give us a little bit too many of these new homes that have really been kind of highly attractive for many first-time home buyers that have been able to retain their employment status throughout this pandemic? The other thing that's really prompting up a lot of the activity, of course, is going to be those historically low interest rates. So there are quite a few factors at play here. But again, we are still seeing that jobs claims are still at a alarmingly high rate or number, and we are still seeing that housing starts will still be an area of positivity, depending on what we're going to see with lumber prices. Of course, that's at a 70-something% high for now. So prices for framing and lumber and building materials are soaring, and that's definitely going to be a potential headwind for overall housing and construction. So those are going to be the updates for this most recent Thursday afternoon. Thanks so much for having me on, and back to you guys.
Well, you can't call him obsequious or a toady. He never believes those. Has he ever believed a unemployment number or a jobless claims number?
I don't think he has. I think he is in the U6 territory, which is it can be dangerous ground beginning in that U6. But I think he has some really strong valid points for starting to really look at the U6 number instead of the U3 number, which the U3 number is your normal unemployment. U6, or as Anthony was saying, is a little bit different. It's a little bit wider net of people that aren't fully employed. They want to be fully employed, but they maybe can only find part-time work, but they don't quite qualify for full unemployment benefits. So there's a lot of gray area there.
There's a lot of gray area there. It seems to be something that I remember throughout my life being utilized quite heavily by politicians.
Were you a
They
toady
like
for the politicians?
no, not no. I've
No.
never been I've never been labeled a toady of government for sure. That is for sure.
Well, that's good.
No, I'm anti all of that type of stuff. Anyways, you know who is certainly not a toady is Bill Cantania of OneRail. He is who's he, CEO and founder of OneRail, and I think we have him on right now. Let's go there. Hey, Bill, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm great, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing awesome, man. Where are you calling in from?
You're intimidating me today with these big words, obsequious. I had to look it up. I mean, I went to a great university, and I did not know what that meant. So I'm never afraid to say when I don't know something, and you're intimidating me.
Yeah, I have mad Google skills, my friend.
You do.
We all have to look it up too.
Orlando, Florida.
All right, beautiful. Hey, for everybody's, we've had you on a little bit earlier in the year. We had you on, but can you for everybody's a little bit of your background, a little bit of what OneRail does here?
Yeah, my background. I've had a career in retail enterprise technology. This company was called M.Dot Network, and we built the first ever point of sale to cloud transaction system. Today, it powers 40,000 stores. A company called Inmar in Salem, North Carolina, a leader in logistics. Bought that company. I was there for a few years, helping to grow it. And then I started this company called OneRail. And what we do is very unique. We're solving a problem that optimizes the cost of final mile delivery, and it ensures the dependability and speed that customers need. Not that they want, but what they need. And we're filling a really big gap that shippers are trying to fill because, a lot of the earlier solutions, it was a shipper, like a retailer, working with many different couriers, which is great, but the problem is the demand that customers have for final mile delivery has exceeded the ability to keep up without a platform. So we have that platform. Think of it like a point of sale system, how important that is to a store. You couldn't run a store without a point of sale system. You certainly can't scale your final mile delivery without a system of record and a transaction system like OneRail.
So go ahead, Kevin.
No, go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to ask to clarify: is it B2B final mile, or are we doing business to consumer, or both, or do you specialize in one or the other?
We focus exclusively on B2B and B2B2C. So our customer, OneRail's customer, would be retailers. It would be product distributors like American Tire distributors, retailers like Menards Home Improvement. And what we do is we integrate with their. So we integrate with ERP, point of sale, with an OMS system. And what we do is we see the order when it comes in immediately. And we have a platform and an algorithm that matches that delivery with, first of all, the right mode. So it could be an internal fleet or external fleet. We have 6 million drivers in our external fleet with 150 delivery companies that we're fully integrated with. And then we send that delivery to the necessary delivery company, and then all the tracking seamlessly goes to the end consumer or the consignee.
So if we use American Tire distributors as an example, because we're a little bit familiar with those guys, it would take in the order and then match it up with one of their thousands of trucks, right? Their delivery trucks, their box trucks that they have, or maybe move it around their internal supply chain in a semi truck, whether it might be owned by American Tire distributors or one of their carrier partners or transportation providers. Is that a good description of it?
It's 50% great. So you had it perfect right up until where it matches it. So yes, we. Okay. With their Oracle solution, we see that order coming in from one of their 80,000 tire shops, but then ATD has 1,500 of their own trucks, and so they sort of have that under control. They're routing their trucks. They're routed. What OneRail has done is we've brought capacity to them that they didn't have to do 90-minute delivery, because when a customer stands up those tires right now, that's competitive advantage for ATD, and it's competitive advantage for the tire shop. So what we do is we see that order, we see how many tires it is, we see how much it weighs, we see what the cubic feet are, and then what we do is that with one of our 150 fully integrated couriers like DoorDash or Postmates or Lyft or Freight. Freight's a great partner of ours, Epic One. We work with independent couriers that have less than 10 trucks, all the way up to Lyft. And so what we're able to do is maximize the unit economic costs, because we can put 2 tires or 1 tire in a lift instead of in a box truck.
Perfect. Yeah. So let's talk about that space, because it's been a space that has been evolving for a long time and at a pretty decent pace, but a snail's pace compared to how it has evolved in the last year, right? So how has that affected you, and how has it caused you guys to pivot, or is it pushing your technology and what you're doing forward, or changing things? What do you see how has it affected your business and growth over the last year? Let's put it that way with the pandemic.
So I'll give you 2 growth points. We've seen 5,200% growth from January of last year until December of last year. So 5,000.
Wow.
And right now we're at about 30% growth over December. So you can do the math on that. We're going to 10x the company this year, and it's really an ocean of opportunity. This is a $400 billion market, and FreightWaves, published probably the best article I've ever seen on Final Mile, which identifies the fact that the category is still being created. A lot of the analysts that do a report on Final Mile, they just want to talk about FedEx and UPS. They're not even thinking about all the things that we're doing. So it's exciting.
Yeah, you brought up that's a really good point, and that's something that we do talk about here at FreightWaves all the time. Is that this is a rapidly evolving and a very dynamic market. So when people, when analysts or anyone else tries to define it, it's really undefinable, because it's changing so rapidly. And I know Seth Holm, one of our researchers, I think that might be his article that you're referencing, is like, there's no definition of the size of the final mile market, and, you have 2020, in 2019, people were trying to define it. 2020 threw a wrench into the whole thing because it's expanded and it had to change with e-commerce and lockdowns and people ordering from home. And it drew these trends that were supposed to be 3 to 5 years out up to 3 to 5 months, right?
Exactly.
So you know, how from your point of view, I mean, how crazy is the final mile market?
I've really been deeply entrenched, like 10,000 hours of experience in two different industries. The first one was digital coupons, and now this. I've been doing this for 5 years. So digital coupon space was exciting. It was pretty fast growth, but it wasn't a need. It was a want. And final mile, it's a need. It's life and death for these retailers. You can watch, you know, we just are finishing up earnings season. Look what happened today. You know, earnings season, it tells a story, right? The retailers that are acing final mile and trimming fat out of their supply chain and making it move faster are being rewarded, and the ones that aren't are not. And so what's happened is, you said 5 months acceleration. I actually think it's 3 years, and the reason I say that is we're working with 2 Fortune 500 retailers right now that we're in the process of launching, and it's roadmaps that originally might have been a 3 to 5 year roadmap, and it's compressed it into 18 months. And it's accelerated the roadmaps of all the major shippers, not just in retail, but product distributors, healthcare, and even supply chain companies. You know, across the board that serve the industry.
Awesome. Hey, we're talking about final mile. Let's talk about the final mile at Daytona, my friend. What's yeah, right? So you guys are check this out.
Awesome.
You drive the OneRail car number 73. Check that baby out. So this is ARCA racing? Is that correct?
It is. So I've raced my whole life. I grew up in a family of racers. You know, for me to sponsor, pretty rare, right? Because when you've got the addiction yourself, it's hard to support somebody else. But Andy Jankowiak is a friend of mine. He made his start with a car that he bought. He's a pizza delivery driver. So think about that. This is a sport. When I competed in ARCA, I raced against, Mari Gallagher's son, Spencer, who owns Allegiant Airlines, and Zaxby's Chicken, the CFO's son. This is a rich man's sport. And for Andy Jankowiak as a pizza delivery driver to buy a car like this from Ken Schrader, a NASCAR legend, put it on the track, he was second fastest to Joe Gibbs Racing, and he finished 8th on Sunday. And that was probably the second biggest storyline during all of Speed Weeks, and that's rare.
That's awesome. I want to put him on that street to get my pizza here faster.
He'll get it there. I'll tell you what. He's like Alan Kowicki. He's a rare bird. He actually works on his own car, and it's nice. It's refreshing. So we use that event to fly in some of our couriers that we work closely with, because racing aligns really well with the courier ecosystem. So we brought in some of our independent operators like Freight and Epic One, and treated them to a weekend of racing, and got to see Andy work his magic on the track.
That's right. That's awesome, right. Hey, my neighbor says hi, by the way. You know who he is. I'm not going to mention his name.
I do. Yeah. Small world.
He's raced against him, Kevin Hill. So it's interesting.
Oh, nice.
But anyways, hey, listen, really, really glad that you came on, Bill, and we'll have you on again soon. I love the space that you're in. People want to learn more, get in touch with you guys. How do they do it, my friend?
You can always go to OneRail.io, or you can always send me an email. Just make it simple, bill@OneRail.io. I get every email that's not assigned, and you can send crazy final mile at OneRail.io, and it's going to get to me. So pretty much anything at OneRail.io, and it'll find me.
Awesome. Thank you
Bill,
so much, Bill. Have a great day, man.
Hey, we also have Stephen White. Go into LinkedIn, and I think you have a new carrier here. He says, "Hello, how can I become part of your database?" It's Stephen White. He's the runs Running Man, courier, and delivery services. So you can find Stephen there. And Stephen, you have Bill's email address now.
Thank you.
You bet. So Well, let's move on
Oh,
to the diesel
are you
prices.
there? I thought I lost you for a second, man. I thought
No,
you
I'm here.
checked out.
I am here. I'm just catching up on LinkedIn. So we have
Oh, I
John
got you.
Kingston, our editor at large, here joining us now to talk about diesel prices and the weather down in Houston and how the closing of refinery capacity because of this deep freeze is moving diesel prices. How are you doing today, John?
How you doing? Good to see you. Good to see you, Kevin. Kevin, looks like you haven't shaved. Is it going to be a full beard, or you just haven't gotten around to it?
I just haven't gotten around to it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, see, you can't say he's a toady. He is not being obsequious with you.
Get excited there for that prospect, you know.
Looks like you're huddled around a campfire there, John.
Is your power out, John?
We're here to talk about diesel. It's crazy. First of all,
Are you telling us a scary story about diesel? It looks like you got the.
I need to sit back. See, Kevin's getting me a new system, so I'm going to look better. How's that? Is that better? Okay.
Yeah,
that's good.
Well, let's talk about diesel. First of all, not the main thing is, but the sort of big benchmark number, the DOE weekly average retail diesel price that's used as the basis for fuel surcharges, was up when posted last Tuesday. It was a day late because of the holiday. That's 15 consecutive weeks. That ties the record. The data series goes back to 1994. You know, given what's going on this week, I think an increase for the 16th consecutive week next week is, entirely possible. I'd put some money on it right now. So then, of course, you had the deep freeze. And yeah, it cut demand some. I'm sure the trucks aren't moving. I know that, I was looking at the OTVI or the OTRI number for Dallas and Houston the other day. It took a big spike up, which you can imagine. But what's happened is that 12 or 13 refineries, pretty much all of them in Texas, have shut down and taken well more than 4 million barrels a day of refining capacity off the market. Figure about a third of that is diesel, if traditional ratios hold. So, you're talking about 1.3 to 1.4 million barrels a day of diesel supply off the market. And so, yeah, it has started to move diesel prices in the physical market and the commodity market up. So the price of ultra-low sulfur diesel on CME is up several cents just since Tuesday. They didn't trade on Monday or didn't settle on Monday. And then the price of physical, that physical market in the Gulf Coast relative to the CME price, that shot up quite a bit. And remember, that's the kind of thing that usually generally moves in like quarter of a cent, half cent jumps. I mean, it at one point yesterday, it was up like 2.5 cents. That's a lot. I mean, that symbolizes a market that is very tight and traders are very concerned about. So you do have a drop in demand, but I think you're going to find it's going to be more than offset by the loss of supply. To me, the most worrisome thing is that these refineries down there are not built for the cold. And I go back long enough to remember. You may have heard some references to this being the coldest weather in Texas since in 32 years. Well, that puts it at 1989. And I remember filing a story for Platts in 1989, sitting under the Christmas tree, literally on Christmas Eve, when a refinery had a massive, explosion or failure. I can't remember what it was because of the cold. Christmas Eve, 1989, cold throughout the whole country. So I think from a perspective of a diesel consumer, what you really have to worry about is that these refineries might not just turn right back on. There may be weeks or months when they just don't operate as efficiently as they did prior to the cold. That's the big concern.
So, John, I had a question, and it could be a dumb question, but you kind of touched on it a little bit. You have deep freezes, everywhere, and your pipes freeze, and these refineries aren't built for the cold weather. I mean, do you have issues like that you have a lot of damage and repair that is going to hurt production for months going forward?
Well, we'll see. I mean, it could be that after the 1989 incident, when a lot of refineries didn't work as well when they came back, that a lot of refineries may have done a lot of upgrading to prepare themselves for these kind of cold snaps. The fact is, of course, these refineries would have had trouble operating anyway because they couldn't get electricity. You had electricity outages through really, all of Texas, but certainly you had it in Houston. So I think a lot of them may have cut themselves off or shut down just because they anticipated being told to shut down. So again, how much of the shutdown was because of a failure of equipment? How much was it because they couldn't get electricity or natural gas in there? And will they be coming back? We're just going to have to look at you're going to have to look at the physical market as a sign of how things are going. and then you'll have to look at the data each week on production. That data is not perfect. The weekly number it's kind of modeled. It's kind of based on data, but kind of modeled also. We'll see how those numbers do. The market, the market doesn't lie, and the market will tell you if, in fact, supply is tight.
So, hey, John, I a little. Well, it's still in with diesel and oil, but off the weather topic is recently on what the truck during our big deal, little deal. I was asked the question of whether the defunding or the stopping of the construction of the Keystone pipeline was a big deal or a little deal, and how it's going to affect crude on rail, et cetera. And my response was, I think it's a complicated deal, and I wish I had John Kingston here to answer the question of whether it was a big deal or not. Can you speak to that right now of what the effects are of that? Is that a big deal or a little deal? What are your thoughts on that?
I'll split the baby here. I think it's kind of a medium deal because the quantities that were going to be carried on that. Remember, there is a Keystone pipeline. What's been shut down is the Keystone XL pipeline, which was kind of a branch off of it that it would have enabled more crude to be carried. So, yeah, I mean, I think that is going to probably push more oil onto the rails. Rails are more expensive to operate like that. Rails are certainly a lot less safe than pipeline. The carbon impact of a moving crude by rail is significantly higher than moving it on a pipeline. And I think some of the activists who fought to have this pipeline shut think you're going to keep that oil in the ground. You're not. I mean, if the world needs it, the price is going to move to a level that's going to incentivize extracting it, and you're going to move it by rail instead of pipeline. I mean, environmentally, you've accomplished nothing. Now, it may be, though, that, there's talk that the Dakota Access Pipeline, which activists had targeted, for years, but actually started up and is operating. I don't know the capacity here, that there's talk that the Biden administration may seek to try to stop that. If it's a cross-border pipeline, they have more power. The federal government has more power to do things about it. If it's just, an intra-country pipeline. So the question is, will they stop Dakota Access? I got to tell you this. I've got to think that some people in the Biden administration, they're not even there a month, and they've already had the first energy crisis. I mean, I'm not. It's obviously, we can talk about what happened in Texas and why did it happen in Texas and what decisions did they make. But already, I mean, the three of us are old enough to know that when the price of gasoline gets really, really high, people go bat, crazy. And I've got to think that already, quite frankly, this whole Texas incident and the spike in prices so far and a potential spike later on is probably going to open up a lot of eyes that, okay, you want to do long-term climate change goals, fine. But if you're going to tell people they got to pay higher prices in the interim, they'll remember that in the voting booth.
Yes, they will.
They will. Thank you very much, John. It's always a pleasure. So we always have backups. We have headshots and kind of a phoner kind of logo in case your video feed doesn't work out. And the TV crew did a special one for you today, just in case, if we can throw that on to follow with the great memes, the Bernie memes. So.
I'm closing in on 1 year since I've been in Chattanooga, and now I really got a few scores to settle when that street.
Well, we were just looking to. We were trying to get a hold of you to get approval to use that. So is that a thumbs up? Yeah, we can use that from now on.
I mean, are you going to use that all the time? Like anytime I'm on instead of live, you're going to just show that picture?
Whether you're on or not, we'll probably put it on.
Okay.
Thanks, John. So
Thank you, guys.
Those insights. So I think we have Nick Austin coming up for another shot of the weather. Let's see what else is happening around the country.
Well, guys, there is still snow falling across parts of Texas, mainly from West Texas over to around Austin, and that stretches all the way to the Great Lakes. We have a mess in the Northeast, too, with snow and some areas on I-95 seeing sleet, freezing rain, too. So still a lot of messy weather, and we showed earlier in Arkansas yesterday on I-40 where there was an accident and a big backup with a lot of tractor trailers just sitting there. And that's been a problem across a lot of southern states with the two storms this week. This is the second one. A lot of shortages of trucking capacity, a lot of drivers just getting stuck, especially in Texas, but in some other areas too. And there's an article up on the website, FreightWaves.com, which talks about that and how there's not really one standard on whether to send truckers into certain winter weather driving conditions, and discusses some of those topics there. And there's also another article that just went up today to celebrate Black History Month. And it talks about the life of a pioneering meteorologist. Her name was June Bacon Bursey. Lots of interesting things about her. So folks can check out those articles on the website, FreightWaves.com. And there will also be links to those on my Twitter account, which is @FreightWeather.
Thank you very much, Nick. Yeah, go online, FreightWaves.com. Check out Nick's weather articles. They're always a great hit. So Michael Vincent, tomorrow on What the Truck? Is it interstellar, intergalactic, or I guess it's not intragalactic, maybe?
Yeah, intra-universal. But intergalactic, yeah, no, it's going to be out of this world again, man. I mean, we're going to geek out on some NASA tomorrow. We've got what is it, Perseverance, landing on Mars. So we're going to celebrate that historic landing of the rover on Mars, and we've got Chuck Duvall, Deputy Program Manager and Launch Services Program and at NASA, and Omar Baez, Senior Launch Director, NASA Kennedy Space Center is going to be on. Greg Viller, Entry and Descent and Landing Operations Lead at NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And then we have Lou Amo, President and Freight Brokerage and Expedite at XPO, and Omar Singh, Founder and President at Surge Transportation. It's going to be a great, great show. You know, Dooner's going to be on fire. He's a big space geek. You know what I'm saying?
He is a big space geek, and he is going to be on fire. I've been seeing photos and kind of the images that you guys are going to be showing for the last couple of days, and they are fantastic. So definitely tune in to What the Truck here at FreightWaves TV on LinkedIn as well tomorrow at noon Eastern time to catch that live and to interact, because that's one of the funnest parts of the show is interacting with you two while you're live.
Well, Dooner gets a little crazy sometimes. He's going to be on fire tomorrow. You know he's going to be on fire tomorrow.
He is going to be on fire tomorrow. He
was on fire on Wednesday. He loved it. Wednesday, we had this founder and CEO, David Lester, founder and CEO of Olipop. You know Olipop?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a soft drink soda with the prebiotics and et cetera inside it that are really good for your digestive tract and so on. So that was really good. And we had Tyler Robertson. Remember and I talked with him earlier from Diesel Laptops when they're doing well over there, but talking about how they hired the elementary school teacher to help out their parents who have kids in school with the closures, and they're going to school and they're not. 3 days this week, still going through that, and really interesting stuff. And Tom Albrecht was CFO and CRO at Reliance Partners was on talking about the bull market in freight. So really good show from yesterday. Check those out. You can go and catch those as well.
Yeah, and then Monday we have the largest virtual event ever. Maybe ever, but certainly ever in logistics and freight and supply chain. It's Global Supply Chain Week. Yes, we have the graphic up there. Go register at live.freightwaves.com, and you'll be able to watch the conference for free, absolutely no charge, and you'll be put into the raffle to win all of these great prizes. What do we have? We have I can't read it on my phone, but we have an Xbox with ADX TV. We have a Traeger grill. It just goes on and on. You can find that live.freightwaves.com here.
Yeah, absolutely. So are you going for the Xbox or the tonal gym there?
I think the tonal gym. I think I need that more than the Xbox right now. So that's what I'm going for. But it's 8 days. The first week, Monday through Friday, is all about the supply chain. Mondays, aerospace, military. Tuesdays, retail. Wednesdays, CPG, food shippers. Thursdays, auto. Friday is energy, oil, mining, what Kingston was talking about. He's got a lot of sessions on that day. And then March 1st through 3rd, Monday through Wednesday of the next week, is all global maritime logistics. We'll be talking about port congestions, supply chains, and how all this all the congestion is going to be affecting everyone's supply chain going forward. So we have 8 full days of that. We have like 100 sessions all devoted to transportation, logistics, supply chain. It's going to be a wild, fun event. We have What the Truck coming in live from there. So go to live.freightwaves.com, check that out. And I think we are about to wrap it up here at the Midday Market Update. And we will
Peace
catch
and love,
you
everybody. Peace and love.
after the conference.